Alamo 3, King.
82 Alpha, send me one. When you have your smoke out, let me know. When you have your smoke out, let me know.
We're going to go ahead and check on Alamo 2.
Okay, babe, okay. When I bring them in, I'll tell you, pop your smoke, pop your smoke. Pop your smoke and drop it at your feet. Drop it at your feet. Now copy.
Roger that.
Okay, now, since we don't have Bravo located, we will not put down ordnance unless you or the Jolly call out ground fire. How copy?
Well, let me share with you that I always love telling this story because I like to talk about the guys that were killed or missing. I think Dave mentioned where we have found all of the MIA and the POWs have been released, except for one. That was Danny Phillips, and that was the motivation for Bill Phillips to write that second book. We're still looking for Danny. We had a number of people. Charlie Lindewall was missing for 38 years. We finally found his body, brought it home. Richard Hanna, also my medic, Moreland, was missing 38 years. We finally found him and brought him home. His mom and dad had died and left space between the graves so that he could be buried there. They were convinced he was coming home. So we did everything we could to bring him home, and we did, and I had the honor of performing the service. The North Vietnamese shoved the love of Jesus right down my throat. I became a minister. I've been a Christian minister for a number of years, pastored 4 churches, preached in prison for 3 years. I wasn't in prison, I was preaching in prison. And one of the reasons I did is because I should have been in prison before I went in the Army. I'm currently teaching weekly in a Valley Rescue mission down in Columbus, Georgia, working with drug and alcohol guys. And I tell you, I love them. I love them. I tell them all the time I couldn't go back and preach at a church because the church thinks they're all guilty and going to hell. And the church don't want to hear that they're sinning and going to hell also. And so that's where I dedicate myself. A little bit about the situation. We were sent out there in October. I first went to Lang Vei in October. It had been overrun about 7 months before. The enemy did not like it sitting right on Highway 9. Highway 9 was one of 2 paved highways in the whole nation of Vietnam and went all the way into Laos, all the way from the ocean across like that. And so it was the most northern. We were actually about 30 clicks below the DMZ, and we were about a click and a half from Laos. You meet a lot of Vietnam vets, and first thing I want to ask you is, did you ever go to Ho Chi Minh Trail? And I said, brother, I lived on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. I mean, that's where Lang Vei was. It was whoever made that decision, wanted to make sure that the North Vietnamese knew we were there. And so went out there in November because they were rebuilding the camp. And in Alfred's infinite wisdom, the Army moved the camp 1,500 meters closer to Laos after it was overrun the first time. And so we had Navy Seabees come out there, and they built a reinforced underground tactical operations center. The ceiling of that thing was 5 feet underground, and it was reinforced steel concrete. Was guaranteed not to blow up or collapse. And so we're running, the thing that the Mobile Strike Force did for Special Forces was we ran long-range patrols, but we also responded to a camp being overrun. So we were actually there for 2 missions. The first mission was do their long-range patrolling while they were rebuilding their camp. The second mission was to help them defend that camp if they got attacked again. So we were set up on an LPOP and patrolling and everything. And the NSA called us, and this was back when they listened to the enemy instead of us. And so they called to let us know that the enemy were going to attack sometime around the first of the year. That's all they knew. And they didn't say anything about tanks or anything else. And so we began to prepare for that. And at one point, the commander of all of Special Forces in I Corps told me to move my mobile strike force inside the perimeter and to interlock them. Montagnards, there are, depending on which experts you talk to, there are between 18 and 38 tribes of Montagnards, many different languages. They're really very native type people. You saw one of the pictures of the interpreter earlier. That was a Montagnard. That was a good-looking kid. And I've seen a lot of Montagnards that are handsome. I mean, and the ladies are very pretty ladies. They have light brown skin and natural ruby lips and everything. And they're intelligent. They're very intelligent people. They've just never been educated. And so we, my Ray, and that's H-R-E, they all had weird spelled names. My Ray were known for being very fierce and ferocious. They worship God, rocks and sticks and stars and leaves blowing in the wind and whatever God happened to be at the time. That's what they worshiped. So they didn't have any fear. They didn't have any real understanding of birth and death because the death of birth rate was extremely high because they didn't have any medicine and stuff like that. They were very native and very basic. So we had not been inside the perimeter. We didn't want to mix the two Montagnard tribes, but we were then told to. So we moved inside, and my tribe, my Montagnards, were mixed in with Captain Willoughby's. He was the 18th commander, and he wanted mine to put in between his so that if his started running, mine would kill his, and to keep him from running. And we moved in that formation like that. And that also put my NCOs around various aspects of the camp. You can see there where at 102 Company, I had a platoon with them. 103 Company, I had a platoon with them. Then I had a platoon in between 104 and actually 103 was in between 103 and 104. And then 101 was, I had a platoon up there. And then I had my command post right around the Four Deuce there. And it doesn't show the 81, but it's a little bit closer this way, but it's that general area. So we were set up doing long range patrols for them in and out of the country and stuff like that. And do you have that river crossing thing? We were wherever we had to be to try to intercept the enemy from coming at us. So this built up until about 5 February. I'm sorry, correction. One other thing I want to add. On about the 31st of January, about the time we went over and one of the young men that was sent out. Special Forces can be very complicated. It's not just a 12-man team with a captain and a warrant officer and 10 enlisted men. We get CIA missions, we get State Department missions, and unfortunately, this mission crossed both lines between the CIA and the State Department. The State Department had a Laotian battalion that actually belonged to them. They paid them, they clothed them, they gave them missions and everything else. And it was called the 33rd Battalion, Laotian Battalion. And they also were working for the CIA. Now, I don't know if the State Department knew that or the CIA knew they were in the State Department, but they were also working for the North Vietnamese. And we knew that. And I don't know if the State Department and CIA knew that or not, but they did. They were. Because we had some interaction with them. They were supposed to be associates, etc. Well, when my guys ran into their guys over at this village where when they brought in the assets to help, they brought in a 3-man Special Forces team to be with the Laotians, because the Laotian battalion commander complained to the State Department that he was not being shown any respect. And so he showed up with 2,200 civilians, women, children, chickens, dogs, pigs, everything they had. All of them were carrying brand new cherry stock AK-47s. And they come walking down the highway. Well, my boss saw them in a helicopter, and he told me, stop them and disarm them. Well, when I disarmed the battalion commander, he got angry, and he called the CIA somehow. I mean the State Department somehow. And they wanted to fire me, but they said, well, he's a crap-for-brain lieutenant. He didn't know what he was doing. There's no sense in firing him, you know. So that's the only reason I even was still there when the battle happened. If I'd have been a captain or a major, I'd have been gone, you know. And so they sent in this 3-man liaison team to help with the Laotians. One of them was a kid named John Young. Any of you that are POW historians may recognize the name because he was a member of the original Peace Committee. The Peace Committee were the ones that turned on America, supported the North Vietnamese while they were POWs with the North Vietnamese. And John Young was captured the very second day he got to Lang Vei. So about 3 days later, right after the Laotians got there, they called and said, we think John Young is over in the Khe Sanh village. Now, Khe Sanh was a military complex, but there was a village right beside of it, and civilians and everything, and said, we want you to go over there and search for him. Well, I hate to admit this, because it doesn't sound very professional. We were going to leave at daylight and walk through the woods, ease up on them, and try to sneak up and kill them. We actually left the perimeter about 9:45. It was just one of them days. Nothing worked right. My yards, they couldn't find each other, and the platoon leaders and the platoon sergeants. So finally, we left about 9:30 or so. As God would have it, we showed up at the village during Pak time. And I don't know if you ever heard of Pak time, but Pak time is when the Vietnamese go to bed. They will literally hang their hammocks. They'll take their clothes off into their they wore little shorty things under there, kind of like underwear, and they start fixing food. And they'll break their weapons down and start cleaning them. From 12 until 2, all across the nation. You can count on it. Well, just by the grace of God, we showed up about 12:15 because we took our time walking through the woods. And I'm being the commander, I'm kind of in a safe zone, a bunch of people in front of me, and all of a sudden I hear bang, 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 bang. And all of a sudden they're shooting all from over here all the way over to here. And I'm like, what? And I'm, hello, hey, 2-6, what's up? There's 6, over. And 3-4, what's up? That's 6, what's all the shooting? And so I kept moving with my troops. And as I broke through the clearing, my guys were dead NVA laying all over in their little panty things. And my guys were mercenaries, so they were paid to capture weapons. And they had weapons slung on shoulders. I mean, they was, one of the sergeants claims that this kid grabbed this NVA rifle by the barrel, and he was trying to pull it away, and the guy was pulling at him. All of a sudden, he looked at him and he said, bang, shot him and killed him. You know what I mean? He was so focused on the weapon. And so, I mean, we didn't find John Young, but we wiped out a battalion. My Montagnard company wiped out a battalion of the NVA. And so, you know, this confirms my conviction. The NVA were useless. I have no respect for the NVA whatsoever. We fought them. We were fighting the ones coming right out of North Vietnam. Brand new uniforms on, brand new AKs, just finished training, and they couldn't hold a stick to my Montagnards and my NCOs that were leading them. And so this changed everything. We found out, I have here a copy of the NVA after action report. And the reason that Dave named it, the problem was because there was a communique sent and said, we've got, Hanoi said, what are you waiting on? They're calling us general. What are you waiting on? You were supposed to have done this 2 weeks ago. And he wrote back and said, we got a problem. So they figured out there was a mobile strike force that had been moved inside the perimeter. If it would just been the A camp, many A camps were overrun, you know, and unfortunately. They used, A camps pretty well were filled with National Guard type kids from the local village. That was where they worked, that was their job. They had wives and children, and so they weren't professional soldiers. So when you read about all these special force camps overrun, only professional soldiers there were the special forces. The rest of them were just kids, you know, trying to protect the area and deny the enemy. So when they figured out that a mobile strike force, a battalion, a company of mercenaries had moved in, this changed the whole complex of the situation. So they wrote back and said, all right, tell you what, use the tanks to just shock and awe, moving across Lang Vei, and then go on to Khe Sanh with them, because the tanks were for Khe Sanh. They weren't for our little old special forces camp. 16 tanks. I mean, they were running into each other. You know, the camp wasn't that big, and it wasn't planned on using it. We've got all this after action stuff from the North Vietnamese, and so we had no idea they were coming. and especially in force like that. And so we set up on the night of the 6th. We're putting out LPs around the perimeter and everything. It doesn't really help because we captured an NVA drawing of our perimeter, and it was as good as ours. It was better than ours. They had measured how far the mortar was from the wire. They had measured where the 4 deuce was, and they did that from the wire. And you might think, well, your soldiers weren't doing a good job. Those guys were. Now, that was one thing I respected, was a sapper. They would strip down with nothing but their little panty things on, and they would crawl through minefield. Minefield didn't mean a thing to them. Barbed wire didn't mean anything. And they would come up to the wire, and they would look inside, and they were given missions. And so they had a perfect drawing of the inside of that perimeter. They had identified each target. And so when they got ready to attack, here was the plan for their tanks. They were going to bring 5 tanks down Route 9. They were going to bring 5 tracks. The Sapone River run right along the side here, and it was a barrier between Laos. And they had built an underground bridge. We found the underground bridge, but still didn't know they were bringing in tanks. And so they came across the Sapone River at Linktree Camp, right down at the bottom there. That's why it's called Linktree Road. And then they had 3 of them break around and come over to where the platoon over there was, Gordon Brandy. And so as they broke into the camp, the flares are going on. Now this battle started about 5 p.m. They started prepping the objective. This is a military tactic that's been used for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And they were shooting rockets and mortars and everything in, starting about 5 o'clock in the evening. Well, they had done that every day for probably 3 weeks. Cold Rock was the most prominent. Mountain. It was a mountain stuck straight up, and you could stand up there and look down inside our wire and adjust your artillery fire based on where it was landing. And so the attack started about 5 o'clock in the evening, but we didn't think that much about it. They'd been doing that for 3 weeks. And so everybody said, okay, let's get some sleep, let's go to bed, because everybody was tired. The biggest problem up until this point was this 2,200 Laotians. They were sick, women were sick, babies were sick. So we had these 3 medics come in to try to help them and to work with them and everything. The problem is we had to feed them. We had to get whatever they needed. And so it overtaxed the logistics system. They'd blown up the airstrip. It had been destroyed with these rockets and stuff coming in. And so the plan for the actual execution of the defense left a little bit to be desired because we had so much going on. We did not have time to stop. We didn't take time to stop and say, okay, let's get ready for this thing. Because you had the Mike Force, I was commanding it, Captain Willoughby was commanding the A team. Colonel Shungle, because of this lieutenant colonel from Laos, the State Department said, we want a field grade officer there every night. So they had to bring in an American field grade officer. Well, there were only 2 of them. Oh, well, 3 of them. Then my boss, Major Hussar, who was the B team, the Mike Force commander, and then there was the assistant commander of I Corps and the commander, Colonel Shungle, Lieutenant Colonel Shungle. So just so happened Lieutenant Colonel Shungle was there that night. And so when the battle started at 5 o'clock, I said, let's go to bed and get some sleep. Told my guys to, stand post guards and go to bed. Well, because we were still rebuilding the inside of the camp, one of the NCOs was sleeping in my bunker. And so about midnight, the phone rings. What, about midnight? Phone rang? About midnight, the phone rang. He's researched all this. I don't remember the exact times and stuff. And John Early, one of my NCOs, picks it up, and he said, 81, he said that. And Nick Fragos, who was on guard at that moment, said, we got tanks in the wire. That's all he said, we got tanks in the wire. And then he called another bunker and told them. And so I said, what's up, John? He said, well, Nick says we got tanks in the wire. I said, for real? tanks in the wire? Okay, man. So we jumped out of bed, and we clothes were on top of our boots. We jumped out of bed, pulled our britches up, put our boots on, threw our web gear on, grabbed our rifle, and ran upstairs. Now our position was to fight from the mortar. So we're looking, and there's, the other mortars are already shooting. So I start shooting flares because I can hear shooting, but I can't see it because of the size of the camp. In other words, if I'd have been up on top of something, I could have seen it, but I couldn't see it where I was. And so we're putting mortar rounds in, and we're firing a loom. And then in between a loom, we're firing HE, explosive type stuff, to try to kill any troops that are with the tanks. And they're coming up from Lang Vei. We know they're coming up there because that's where the first shooting started. It didn't start over here and over here until maybe 45 minutes later. And so we're shooting this HE and this. And all of a sudden now, after about 30 minutes, we look up, and here comes this tank all by itself. We're looking for infantry soldiers with it. One of the things we had told that if there were tanks, and we had a hint there was tanks, I think one of the SOG guys had found tracks or something, that they had bulldozers and everything else over there, so nobody was sure it was really tanks, but they thought, well, if it is. And then one of the facts, Air Force facts, said that he saw a tank in a fight over in Laos. And so we'd had 100 light anti-tank weapons. That's a disposable 66 millimeter tank killer. It's a little plastic rocket. And so a Mattel toy type thing. And so, excuse me. So Dennis Thompson, who, there's a report in this week's newspaper that says the Army is taking 20% of mentally challenged young people into the Army today. Did any of y'all see that? Yeah. Let me tell you something. They were doing that a long time ago because guys like that were mentally challenged, or they wouldn't have been in the Army. These guys were crazy. Go out there with two other Americans or one other American and six indigenous that couldn't even speak English. So anyhow, Dennis Thompson was born mentally challenged. He really was. He had no fear of anything. And he thought it was funny. He come running up and said, "What's up, guys?" I said, get some laws up here, hurry up. So we grabbed a law, and so they cocked one for me. I took the first one, and we have a little parapet over the back. And so I dropped down, and I'm aiming right toward I think, okay, if I can put this inside the tank, it'll blow up inside. And the driver has a little viewing port like this. And so I took it and I went. So I cocked it a couple of times, and give me another one. So he gave me, the fourth one finally fired. And when it hit the tank, it went and shot straight up in the air. That was it. But it got the tank's attention. And the tank goes, stops, and the two of us looked at each other, and it has a long thing sticking out the front of it like that, with a hole in the end of it. And it goes, and it's coming this way. And I stood there a minute, and I'm thinking, okay, Lieutenant, what you going to do now? And we went through that in OCS a number of times, and I said, boys, I think we better get out of this bunker pit. And so grab them laws and let's spread them out. So we took off running with the laws, and they blew that pit. It went. Somebody told me once, said, well, the PT-76 only had a 76 millimeter gun on it. And I said, have you ever looked at the barrel of a 76 millimeter gun? I said, boy, don't talk that trash to me. That thing was that big around, and then my little old bullet was about like my finger, And so I told Dennis, I said, go down and check on Gordon down at the corner down there, because they had really, it'd been bringing smoke down there. It was a whale of a fight going on. No tanks yet, but a lot of shooting. And that was what we told the little people. We said, you kill the bad guys, we'll kill the tanks. Because I didn't want them paying attention to them. I said, ignore them tanks. Just don't let them run over you. They will not bother you, And they couldn't shoot one little old guy like that. They couldn't even see him, And so I run over, and so I told John, I said, John, go join your platoon and keep them in the place where they're supposed to be. So I go over, and here's Colonel Shungle, and he says, Longgrear, you got any laws? I said, yes, sir. I carried about 4 of us, but they don't work. And he said, we don't have anything else. And I said, good point. That's why he's a colonel and I'm a lieutenant, you know. And so he said, here, let's grab one and let's go kill a tank. That's a lieutenant colonel, man. Let's find somewhere to hide, you know. So, you know, I'm go with the colonel, and so all of a sudden, sure enough, here comes another tank, look like that. And so I said, all right, sir, you ready? And he said, you don't shoot them both, shoot both laws at the same time, because I had another one on my shoulder. And I said, yes, sir, because I'm concerned one won't do it. So we hit it from the side, and I mean, boom, man, we killed that dude just like that. Both of them fired, and it hit. So then I pulled the side. Here come another tank and they were coming from Linktree here, where the 5 tanks are coming from. And so I popped the other law off my shoulder, cocked it, pulled the safety and everything, dropped down on one knee, and it misfired. So I took and did it again, you know. And he had one. He couldn't get the safety out. Well, I wore aviation gloves, those leather gloves, not the Nomex, but the ones that were leather back then. And so I reached and I snatched that thing out. And so then we fired again and killed another tank. But that was 4 laws. Now, I'm sorry, I had another law on my shoulder. That's right. I had 3 and I gave him 2. So he said, I'm going to go look for more laws. You see what's going on over there. And I said, yes, sir. I hadn't been down there. That was over where all that fighting was going on with Gordon Brandy. And so I take my little car 15 and I'm snooping and pooping and making sure there's no bad guys. Let me say this in honor of the little people. Until the last 30 minutes of the battle, no enemy soldiers made it inside that perimeter. The little guys stayed and fought them and killed them. But they were all shot up and wounded and everything. In fact, at one point, my Montagnard counterpart, company commander, come running up, limping up, and he'd been hit about 4 times. He said, Chung-Wei, could you get me a medevac? Like I'm gonna call a helicopter in there, you know. I said, son, go down and get in the bunker down there. I'll get you when this is over. And I'm not knowing how it was going to end. And so I'm snooping and pooping, going over there, not seeing any soldiers. And all of a sudden, the hair stood up on my arms. Now, I'm not a scaredy cat guy, okay? I'm not as stupid as Dennis or him, but I'm not a scaredy cat guy. I don't just get real scared. But I'm telling you, the hair stood up on my arms and on the back of my neck, and something weird was moving around. And I said, I think Gordon's all right. And so I turned, because the shooting had quit, and I didn't know it, but he had been captured. He was the first one that was captured inside the perimeter, and they were taking him out. But anyhow, so I come back, and I come to another tank, and there's Dennis Thompson and Moreland on top of the tank, trying to get the guy to open the tank. I said, get off the tank, you know. I held up a law, and they said, oh, okay. So they run, you know, and I never did kill the tank. I only had one law. It didn't kill it, but at least it shot, and maybe it upset them. I don't know. Made them mad. So then I go back over. Now this fight's been going on. This is probably about 12:30 or 1 when I go in to talk. You remember?
A little later than that, probably 1:30.
Well, about 1:30. That's when I shoot the last law, and I come up, and here's Colonel Shungle. McMurray is over here, Lieutenant Wilkins, Colonel Shungle, myself, and my medic Moreland is standing there. And the colonel says, okay, let's defend the TOC, because the TOC's all we had to communicate with aircraft and artillery. That was our radio system down in this TOC, and had all kinds of antennas sticking up. So we kind of take up fighting positions to defend, because we don't know where anybody else is. There's bodies everywhere and people dying and stuff. And so we're standing there, and all of a sudden I see movement, and I look, and I said, sapper, sir. And he said, I don't see him. Can you take him? And I said, yes, sir. So I raised up, and put about 7 or 8 rounds in them, you know. And then Moreland threw a hand grenade just to make sure they were dead. And then this tank, when he threw the hand grenade, it exploded, and the tank saw it. What'd you throw this hand grenade for, man? Good Lord. And he said, maybe they weren't dead. I said, well, I killed them. You know, anyhow, that's one of them funny moments in combat when, you know, it's not funny. So So, I'm thinking, and this tank, when it stops, it goes, that long thing again, with the hole in the end of it. And I'm thinking, come on, sir, come on, let's do something. A lieutenant can't run if a colonel's standing there. I mean, and I mean, I'm not real smart, but I'm that smart. And so I'm thinking, come on, sir, let's do something. And so he says, do you know where there's any more laws? And I said, I'll go look, sir. That's all I wanted was an excuse. So I took off and I ran down into the talk because I was thinking that someone had been hunting the talk. As I got to the bottom of the talk, boom, the guy blew the door in. I mean, he collapsed just right around the door there. And so at the bottom, we locked the door, thinking that Shungle had been killed and McMurray was captured. Moreland had already made it in. Moreland was an E4, but he's a lot smarter than me. He had already made it in the bunker. He was inside the talk when I got there. And he was standing beside me just a minute before. I don't know if he jumped in or what. But this thing was about, the ceiling was 5 foot below ground, and it was about 12 foot high inside there. And it was about as big as from here to that wall, rectangular. It's a little bit longer the other way, but not much. It's big. It was big. There was enough room in there for 3 or 4 guys to sleep and run radios and stuff like that. And so, we decided to take up defensive positions inside the talk. And so this is about, by then it's probably about 3:30 or 4. And so we said, okay. They then destroyed the generator, which was our only power source, and they ran over all the antennas that were sticking up. So we couldn't talk to anybody, didn't have any power, no lights, and it was dark. I promise you, 5 feet underground, closed in. It was pure black. I mean, at one time I did like that just to be able to say I did that, And really, and so I'm like, good Lord, what's next? So the plan this was the written plan approved by the Department of the Army. The Marines at Quezon, there were 8,000 of them? 5,000 Marines at Quezon. And they were going to send out about 100 of them and reinforce us, and or relieve us, whatever. And so the next morning, we finally get the radios working again. And in the meantime, the NVA hollers down one of the pits. He said, hey, GI. Nobody would say anything. GI, we know you in hole. We know you in hole. And so he said, we're going to blow you up. Well, Nick Fragos, he got upset and said something about his mama. I think it made the guy mad because he said, this be last warning, and somebody else said something about it. And I know it really made him mad then because he pushed that plunger, and they blew a hole in the side of that wall. I mean, it was huge. And it just, it knocked everybody out. Well, except Nick Fragos, the guy that said something. It knocked me. I split my head open right here, and I blew my watch off my wrist, and I'm out. I mean, I'm laying there like this, and all, I kind of started coming to, and I said, what the? And then it dawned on me where I was. I said, oh. And so there's a big sheet of plywood laying on top of me. And so I'm kind of looking around, and I hear feet shuffling. And I thought, damn, low-life scumbags are going around bayoneting everybody. And so I found my rifle. He'd blown my rifle out of my hand. The Car-15 is a very unique configuration. So I felt it and made sure that everything was working, got the handle grip, the hand grip, and I jumped up. Well, Fragos was walking around trying to find us because it was so much dust and smoke in there. And you couldn't even hardly see, even though now there's a big hole in the wall. And so he said, I went, oh, don't shoot, And he said, where's everybody? I said, man, I don't know. I just woke up. And so we started finding everybody pouring water in their face and slapping them and stuff like that. So everybody's still alive. And so we take up fighting positions. Then they start throwing in satchel charges. Then they start throwing in, I don't know if you know what incendiary grenades are. They burn brightly. White phosphorus grenades. And then the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life is a flamethrower. I'd seen them in movies, and I always thought, man, I'd like to have a flamethrower. I didn't want the other guy to have a flamethrower. He put that thing in there, and it goes, whoo, and it puts out a liquid flame, and it sticks to everything. All of a sudden, we're burning. I mean, this whole place is on fire. And so, you know, and smoke, it was the finish was burning. They had some desk and stuff in there, and stuff was burning, and it was so toxic you couldn't even breathe. At one time, I got down in the floor and put my nose in the corner of the floor with a handkerchief over it, just trying to breathe. And I lost my rifle. And so now then, at this time, I don't realize it, but Frankie Dooms, who was the radio operator, he retired as an E9, commanded a Halo team and a scuba team. He's a great soldier, tremendous soldier. He retires an E9. He's an E4 at the time, and I didn't know it, but Toby Rushforth, the fact, told us later. He said that he had the radio in his hand. He said, help us, please, somebody, they're killing us. Somebody come and help us, please, you know. Now, here's an E9 Special Forces guy 30 years later, just whining like a baby, you know. So Toby tells the A1 guys from the Coral Sea have come. And all 6 of them are stacked up because they hadn't been able to drop any ordnance because it's overcast. And according to the pictures and all the reports and everything, it was pure clouds. I mean, nothing. And so, you know, he said, look, we're running out of fuel. We're going to have to get out of here. And the guy with a red circle around his face was the flight commander, Zip Rousa, greatest man I know. And Zips told Toby, he said, find me a sucker hole. I can't leave. I can't leave them like this. I'm going to drop ordnance somewhere. So Toby, fortunately, found a sucker hole, and it was right on top of us. Now, I'm going to tell you, I cannot explain how complicated this was. They were throwing grenades in. In fact, my next one was a piece of grenade in the ankle. There was a column there, and I was behind the column. We'd set up positions to cover each other in crossfire in case they come rushing in. And so I'm like this, and it goes, that thing goes, like that on that concrete floor. And I said, grenade! Well, I leaned back, but my leg was sticking out. And that's when I got hit in the ankle. And so I, you know, said a few choice words and started looking at where it came from. I happened to see movement. I looked up, and there was an air vent up there. And these eyes were looking like that. And I went, pow! And then pretty soon, here come another grenade. And a guy looked, pow! Every time they throw grenades, they would look. And then they got to where they were looking before they threw the grenade. I'd shoot them again, you know. And Frankie Doom said, you know, Lieutenant, I think you probably killed about 30 people because they kept throwing them hand grenades in there. And so, I mean, this was intense. It really was. I try to keep it light because, you know, it's what it was. But so in the meantime, Frankie said, they're killing us, please, somebody help us, you know. And so there's this hole, and he said, it's right on top of them. And so Zip called, he said, or Zip didn't, but, well, I guess they have FM, I don't know. But anyhow, whoever, I wasn't talking to anybody, but they said, put it right on top of us. They're all over us. I mean, they're throwing in grenades, they're shooting flamethrower. And as God would have it, the hole was right on top of the dock. And he come down, I guess he had bombs or whatever was exploding. We could hear the explosion, and we could hear screaming. And then here coming up, and then they didn't put any napalm on it because we were inside. That would have sucked the air out, and that would have defeated the whole purpose. But they expended all their ordnance on us. Well, that blew them off of us and gave us a chance to regroup. And so we got our act together, put the fires out, and slowly the fumes and toxic air and everything went out through the vents. And so Captain Willoughby then got on the radio. He was knocked out. He was hit in the head and knocked out for a while and kept going in and out of reality. And he says, let me have the radio, Dooms. And he called Colonel Lowndes, the Marine commander at Quezon, who was supposed to be sending this 100-man force. I mean, that was plan A. I mean, that was understood. And because this camp had been overrun before. And now that the Marines were there, they could do that. They weren't there the first time. And now this is a quote by Captain Willoughby. I did not talk to Colonel Lowndes. So if he's your cousin, I'm sorry, I'm not saying anything. Colonel Lowndes told Captain Willoughby, according to Captain Willoughby, who was an officer and gentleman, he said, Captain, said there's only 8 of you left alive. And said there'd be more Marines killed than that trying to rescue you. We're not coming. when Captain Willoughby told us that, if there was any fear or any compassion of any kind, love, any other emotion other than hate, I'm not aware of it. Because, I mean, man, you could hear people grinding their teeth and, you know, and he kept calling us, sir, you know, we got to have we send somebody. And we couldn't get to our headquarters because it was too far away. Quezon was only about 5 miles away. So when he said that, I got very angry, and I got over in a corner by myself. Now, my wife was a Christian woman, and we had a baby right before I left. In fact, 3 days before I left to go to Vietnam, I had a baby, or a week, something like that. But she said, I'll be praying for you. And I said, yeah, okay. I wasn't raised in church. I didn't know what to pray for you. I figured pray meant talk to God or something, and if she knew God, talk to him. You know, it's fine with me. I didn't believe God would have anything to do with me because I knew me real well, and if he's God, he knows me real well. And I was not a nice guy. We'll leave it there, okay? And so I got over in a corner, and so I take my dog tags off, and I dig a hole in all this rubble, cover them over. Then I take my knife, boys up here, I took my knife off, and I cut my ID card up. Because I think some guys were not captured, but they got their ID. And I'm hoping that, because there's still over 1,500 of them supposedly missing. And so I did that. I took all my bullets out of my magazine. I had one bullet left. I started that fight with 300 rounds, and I had 19 bullets left. So you can figure the math out on your own. And my Sergeant Early, his rifle was destroyed. He had a .45 with 5 rounds. Now, we hadn't had any water to drink. We were all bleeding. In fact, Moreland bled out and eventually died. So I get over in the corner by myself. I said, look here, God. I'm not asking anything for me, but my wife is a Christian, and my baby's never hurt anybody. So if you're really a God, I expect you to take care of them. You understand that? And people say, you said that to God. Hey, that's the way I spoke to men. I mean, I didn't know the ABCs of Christianity or the Roman road and all that stuff we teach. I didn't know any of that. My mama was married to 5 duds, and 4 of them beat on me. And so we didn't go to church. We didn't know anything about church. We were poor, and we just did what we could do to get by. And so, but this thing was rolling through my head. I'll be praying for you, be praying for you. And so I stood up and I said, all right, everybody listen to me. That's it. I'm taking my 2 men and we're leaving. Because everybody was, well, what are we going to do? Well, we'll wait here and finally the special force go. Well, no, we need to go. I said, all right, listen to me. I'm leaving and I'm taking my 2 men. I had my medic and I had Sergeant Early. I said, you people can stay down here and die like worms if you want to. I'm going up on top of the ground and die like a man. I can't do this. I cannot take this. And so I went over to get Moreland, and Moreland had a head wound and went into shock, and he attacked me. And so he's got a hold of my rifle. I'll kill you. I mean, he was screaming in my face, and I couldn't get it away from him. Moreland was about my size, and we were both same age, same size and everything. And he was, out of his mind. So I looked over at Nick. I said, Nick, pop him, with some juice and put him to sleep. He said, it'll kill him because it's a head wound. I said, I'm fixing to kill him if you don't. I mean, we're life and death here. I love Moreland, and I did his funeral and cried. But this was life and death. I had 6 other men that I felt responsible for. So Nick came over and popped him in the leg, and almost instantly, Moreland went, just like that. And so I got my rifle back, and I started to go get John and drag him over to the door because I was going to carry him out. And Willoughby said, wait a minute, Lieutenant. I said, look, I've waited as long as I'm going to wait. I can't take this anymore. I'm going crazy down here. I'd rather go up there and die. He said, just shut up, listen. We're all going. And they all kind of looked at him and said, if the lieutenant goes, we all go. And I said, that's up to y'all. And so they started burning a bunch of crypto stuff we shouldn't even had there. I don't know why it was there. But anyhow, we get over to the door, and I said, okay, everybody check, and I counted my bullets. I had 19 bullets because I was going to save the last bullet for me. I'd been in jail, and I wasn't going in a foreign jail, I promise you. I wasn't going to do it now. And so I cleaned each bullet, put it back in my magazine, put it in, put a round in, safety on. I said, okay, kiddo, let's go, let's go. So we all gathered up. I said, all right, here's the way it's going to go. Who's going first? Frankie Doom said, hell, Lieutenant, it's your idea. You go first. And I said, I think you're right. Okay. So, I mean, my idea, I told them I was going whether they went or not anyhow. So, so 3 of them couldn't walk. 3 of them were carrying the other 3 or lifting them up. And so the steps are all gone. They've been blown out. The wall is about that wide, but it's got the risers where the steps were on. And all of them, and so I get on there, like this, and the A1s are still working the area. I mean, they're still flying over, and napalm and all kinds of stuff. And so we can hear that going on. And there's some artillery coming in. And so I'm walking up these steps. I got my shoulder here and my hand over here, and I got my rifle like this. And I'm looking up, and I'm saying, oh, please don't look. Please don't look. Because if he'd have looked and dropped one hand grenade, he'd have got us all. There's a little bitty enclosure. So I get up to the top, and there wasn't anybody there. Now, Colonel Shungle, when we told him we were coming out, he said, all right, here's the plan. We're going to continue to fly over. The enemy is using your old fighting positions to protect themselves from the bombs. And so hopefully they won't realize they're going to make 3 wet runs, and then they're going to come dry, not drop any ordnance. And that's your time to take off running. So we get up on the ground, and there's some barrels there. And so I come up behind the barrel. Come on, there's nobody up here. Hurry. And so they were pushing them up to me, and I was slinging them up on the ground like that, I said, all right, here's the thing. If anybody hits the ground, they stay where they lay. I'm getting as many of us out of here alive as possible. And so I said, now, Eugene Ashley had tried to fight his way to us. This was the guy that had they were with the Laotians. They had tried to fight their way to us that morning. Ashley had been killed, was awarded the Medal of Honor. That's a very brave thing to take 2 men and yourself and assault at least a company like that. But he was a soldier, a man. And so, that everybody, he told us, he said, if you come out, head toward the bunker, the supply bunker, number 2 supply bunker. I said, all right, go right down through there, and I'm going to cover some security. And so there was a tank sitting there, and you can see it. I don't know if it's in the picture or not. The tank is sitting right here. And so as I stepped out and looked that way, there was a machine gun sitting there, 2 enemy soldiers behind it. The 2 enemy soldiers, I paid my mercenaries on 5 February. This was the morning of 7 February, and they didn't go anywhere 6 February. They all had a pocket full of money. We paid big money for their life. These 2 soldiers, 2 NVA soldiers, had gone around and robbed all the bodies. They had a stack of money about that high and about that wide. Somehow my eyes locked onto it. And I turned and assaulted, and I went to fire a burst of 6. How many bullets was that?
3.
My rifle jammed. You ever thought about beating yourself to death? That ain't gonna work. And as I was running toward the machine gun, my ankle popped, and I landed flat on my back. Knocked the wind out of me. And so I threw my arm out so somebody could grab it as they took off running. That's what you do, because the enemy will let you stay alive and for guys to come back. And, they were gone. I said, well, what's this, man? This is my idea, I mean, you wouldn't even be up here if it wasn't for me. And then I remembered what I said. If anybody gets hit, they stay where they lay. I wasn't talking about me. I mean, come on now. I'm a lieutenant, let's put this in the proper perspective here, But anyhow, they're gone, and I'm trying to get my breath. So I started trying to clear my weapon, and here comes this A1, and the artillery rounds are all around the perimeter, and these A1s are like that. And I look up, and this A1's about 50 feet. That's my best guesstimate. My thought pattern was, if I could jump 50 feet, I'm out of here. I mean, really, what's 50 feet life and death, That was my thought. And then the old boy, I met him in Denver at a reunion. He wiggled his wings. And I'm going to tell you something, boys and girls. When he wiggled them wings, he couldn't have blessed me anymore. All of a sudden, I realized I wasn't alone. He was 50 feet away, but he was there. And so you know. And so I began to try to unjam my rifle, and all of a sudden everything went quiet. I didn't hear any airplanes, I didn't hear artillery. I looked up, and there's an airplane sitting in the sky, just sitting there. And I'll go to my grave telling this story. I looked up, and that airplane, that A-1, was frozen in the air. I'll be praying for you. I'll be praying for you. And then I thought, the engine's not even making any noise. Then I thought, shh, 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 artillery round stopped. Everything is dead silent, and I'm laying there, can't breathe, can't shoot myself. My men are gone. I'll be praying for you. And then I hear feet shuffling behind me. So I grabbed my rifle by the barrel, and I went to turn and hit whoever it was, and it was a bright, blinding light. Literally bright. I mean, I couldn't even look at it like that. I put my hand up and tried to look, and I couldn't. It was so bright. It was like suddenly welding and stuff. And so I'll be praying for you, be praying for you. And then the voice says, this light says to me, what are you going to do? That's the God. That's the God. My wife is called God. I didn't know God showed up. I've never seen God before, heard of God being anywhere. And so I'm trying to figure out how do you blow smoke at God? You know, I mean, I've always blown smoke to get out of trouble and stuff. And I'm thinking, what can I say to God? What do you say to the God? And so I laid there a minute, and then this voice says, what are you going to do now? And my mama used to say now. When she said now, that was it. There wasn't going to be another now. I mean, that was the only now. I'll be praying for you, be praying for you. And I felt a warm syrup coming down over me like this. And I thought, I'm kind of at peace. And all of a sudden I thought, oh, I understand. I'm dying. I'd never died before, so I wasn't sure how it worked. I thought, this is dying, you know? You lose your sense of motion, you lose your sense of sound. Pretty soon, because this thing was about here, so pretty soon I'll be blind, and then I won't feel it. And I wasn't in pain. There was no pain. My ankle didn't hurt, my wrist didn't hurt, my head didn't hurt. I'm just laying there, and I'm kind of like breathing. And what are you going to do now? And then I was trying to figure out, and all of a sudden it dawned on me, this warm, syrupy feeling was love. I'd never in my life experienced love. Now, Mama worked 2 or 3 jobs, put clothes on my back, did the best she could, but it was rough. I'd never literally felt love. And even when I married my wife, I knew it's a woman I want to spend my life with, but I didn't know how to love. I truly didn't, and she knows that. She's heard this story over and over. And so I began to weep. And then when I realized it was the love, I just cried like a baby. And I said, God, I don't want to die now. Not now. I didn't repent of sins. I didn't say the ABCs of Christianity. I didn't pray the Romans road. I didn't know that stuff. But God was looking at my heart. Airplane, boom, took back off. I looked up, artillery rounds, all over. And all of a sudden, I just kind of laid back. Oh, wait a minute. You know, he didn't say stay here. And so I didn't know, maybe an angel was going to come down and get me or something. This is my first experience with God now. And so I kind of get up on my leg, you know, and I maybe my rifle's not jammed, you know, and I checked, and it was still, I couldn't get the cartridge out. So I start going over. I get to the military crest of the hill, and my guys are down there, and they see movement, and they turn around, and they put their guns on me. And I said, no, don't shoot. Please don't shoot. Not now. Don't shoot. And they said, come on, LT, come on. So I got down there, and we made it to the rendezvous point. And at the rendezvous point, I passed out from, I guess, a loss of blood or meeting God or something. But, I passed out. And they wrapped my head. And you got that picture that shows the picture of me over at the rendezvous point. They're trying to get Colonel Shungle had made it out during the night. Well, early the next morning by himself, him and Lieutenant Wilkins. And they were trying to get these Marine helicopters to land. And so this young man sitting over here was a door gunner in that helicopter right there. And I'm going to let him tell you how they wound up there, because other than God, I don't know. And so when Colonel Shungle said, go pop smoke, Longgrear. And so I went out there and I said, tell me when. And he hollered, pop it. I popped the smoke, and here comes this Army helicopter. Now there's two CH-46 Marine helicopters flying in a circle up there. And I'm not sure what they're doing. Wasn't talking to them on the radio, but I know what Colonel Shungle said. He said they said they would not come in until we had a secure LZ. Well, we weren't going to have a secure LZ. In fact, the enemy had set up on the far side of old Lang Vei. They thought the Marines would be coming. They knew what the plan was. They thought the Marines would be coming and they were going to ambush them. Well, when they saw them helicopters, they got command guy. I guess they called them and said, turn around and go to old Lang Vei. So here they come. They're running down through there with their rifles and everything. And this guy is at Quezon, and he sees a helicopter. He said, where are you going? And I'll let them talk about that. But this, the helicopter picked me up, put our men on there, the wounded. And in fact, one of them has got his head wrapped. The rest of them are putting on stretchers like that. We were in bad shape. I mean, it was all over but shout. And this is my Montagnard counterpart. He's that tough one. See all them bullet holes in him. He come over and during the night and said, Chung Wee, I need a medevac. And I said, go back, you'll be all right. You know? So when I got on the helicopter, we were throwing indigenous personnel off. And I didn't think the helicopter was going to rise. And so I reached and grabbed this. There was a black head of hair under the seat. I grabbed it, and I looked, and he looked at me, and he said, Chung Wee, Chung Wee. And so I looked around, and the helicopter's getting up, so I just sort of tapped him on the head. Then when I got off the helicopter, I carried him as far as I could, and I couldn't carry him anymore. And so I told that Navy corpsman to go get him. He was a good one, and he was one of mine. And then the other corpsman grabbed me. And so at this time, I'm going to turn it over to, well, I'll let you get on the helicopter. Because you really want to.
Okay, well, I'm Tim Kirk. I was part of the rescue force that ended up going in. Of course, the night before, all the time that this fight is going on at Lang Vei, we're 5 miles away, and we can, of course, hear everything that's going on. We have radios, and you know, we know that they're in big trouble, and you know, we want to go help. They're our brothers. And
Mentally challenged.
Mentally okay, we may be mentally challenged. So I was a member of the FOB-1 Hatchet Force, which was out of Fubai, and we had been sent up there to help reinforce the perimeter of the SOG camp. And so the next morning, Major Cuomo in the lower middle there had been trying to put together a force. They were trying to get the, you know, it was going, I don't know all the details, but they were trying to get the Marines to respond, and they were trying to get aircraft, and they couldn't get anything. And this whole time we're like, hey, come on, let's just go. You know, we were going to go out, we wanted to go out the road. They wouldn't let us do that. And then, so finally, later in the afternoon, they finally determined that we were going to be able to get some aircraft. So they ended up with a couple of CH-47s, I guess they were, and some gunship support with them. And Chips, I like to bring this part up because our commander of the Hatchet Force was Chips Fleming, a lieutenant, and he talks about how you know, they asked for volunteers, and the Hatchet Force volunteered. Of course, me and Robbie don't ever remember volunteering. He just, pardon the expression, but he just said, grab your shit, we're going. It's like, okay. So they had a couple of recon teams in our Hatchet Force, which is about 40 guys, 4 Americans, the rest indigenous, and they started loading people up. They didn't have enough room in the helicopters for everybody, so, and I did not know this until a couple of days ago, but this Army slick landed, and so I said, well, where are you guys going, basically? And he said, well, we're going Lang Vei. So I said, well, That's where I'm going. I need a ride. And so we took off a little bit behind the rest of the rescue force. So when we got out there, they were all circling around, and I didn't have a headset on. So when we got there, just about the time we got there, I looked down and I see smoke on the LZ, and I look down, I see people running every direction, and bodies and people running everywhere, and so I reached up and tapped him to go down. The pilot, he kind of looked at me a little bit, and then I pointed again, let's go down, and so he just peeled off and just dropped right in. And of course, about the time I jumped off the chopper, I realized that the other guys were still in the air. I was the only one on the ground. I had two Nungs and me. And Paul was kind of laying outside this bunker trench area, just kind of laying there. And I could see some movement, so I started, I just started running over there and just grabbing people, helping as fast as I could get on the helicopter. Not that I was being a hero, I just knew the helicopter wasn't going to leave until they were on there. And I wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible. So, I don't know, Sergeant Craig, the team sergeant, he was about twice as big as me, and I was a lot smaller back then. But I threw him over my shoulder, ran down, ran back, threw him on the chopper. By then, Lieutenant here he was already in the chopper, and this horde of people came running. All the Laotians who had dropped their guns and all ran away now all decided they wanted to be on our side again. They came running back. Well, I don't know, about that time the slick took off. It had everybody on there. And then the CH-47s came in. Major Cuomo was directing. Lieutenant Fleming and the hatchet force came off, and everybody started running. And Fleming told me there was a machine gun firing. I don't know if this is the picture of the camp, the old camp, but on the old camp there, kind of on the southwest corner, there was a machine gun firing, raking the LZ for where the aircraft were. And I didn't know there was a mortar there too. I didn't realize that, but Lieutenant Fleming told me take that machine gun out. So me and my Nungs, we assaulted the corner there, and we took the machine gun out. And then as soon as they quit firing, we started shooting at the mortar crew, and actually lobbed an M79 right into the middle of them, took them out. And I think unbeknownst to me, of course, at the time, as Dennis Thompson, he's trying to make his way up there. I didn't find this out till he was released a long time later, but the mortar crew and the remainder of the troops that took off ran back over the hill. I believe they're the ones who captured Dennis. So I had to apologize to him for that. So, but I didn't know until the other day that somebody had asked me, well, were you on the Army helicopter? Where were you? Were you on the Chinook? I said, no, I was on the only slick that landed, I was on it. And they said, well, that was an Army slick. And Ray here was in it. So we just met, 2 days ago, I guess. So I'll let you talk a little bit about it.
Oops, excuse me. Well, I'm new to all this, and this is my first one, and I'm probably the lowest grade in here. I was only E4. Been 2 years in the Army, 18 months in Vietnam. I'm telling you about this mission. We were stationed somewhere close there. I can't remember exactly where we were, but I wound up getting PTSD from this particular battle. When we got to Quezon, it was chaotic. I mean, it was mortars coming in, rockets coming in, and my pilots, we had to refuel. And in the process of just refueling, I had to drop the nozzle 3 times. So we had to circle around and then go all over the place, try to dodge all the shells that were coming in, mortars and so forth. Took us three times to get the helicopter filled up. And when we did, we went straight on over to Lang Vei. And I don't remember waiting, we didn't wait very long. I mean, there was a fax airplane flying around, and we were waiting for him to give us the okay to go down when the LZ was secure. And he never did give us the okay to go down. And so after the smoke was popped, we flew around maybe 2 more times, waiting for the okay, and finally we said, that's it, we're going down. My pilot says, we're going down. And we went down there, and there was chaos. I'll never forget. I mean, the whole entire day I was going through a lot of problems. Got down on the ground, and I remember Paul looking in that helicopter, and all of a sudden I was so intense looking up on the hill, waiting for a tank to come rolling over top of that hill. Because my pilot said as we were flying in there, my pilot mentioned to me, he said, look, there's a tank down there, they probably have a 50 on it. So they'll eat us up with a 50 if somebody jumps upon it. So I was watching that tank until we got down out of his side of that blown out tank. And so I was looking up the hill, and then all of a sudden these people started coming, civilians were coming on. And the only way I can describe what they looked like, it was if you would take this spot right here, 8 or 6 by 6, and stand people up in it that are tangled together and tied to each other. They were hanging on to everything in the helicopter. I mean, their hands were just like, I was describing it to Paul, and I said it was like crabs coming out of a steam pot, all hung together. And Paul got up there and put the gun in their face and says, no, get the hell off of here. So they jumped off the back. And when they jumped off the back, they jumped so suddenly, all of them going out of the back. It scared me because I figured they jumped off so quick. I was thinking, uh-oh, there's a tank up on the hill getting ready to shoot us. So I looked up, and I had mount guns then. I couldn't shoot through the blades because I was looking up the hill. So the guys finally got off, and we make a short story. We tried to take off, and we were en route and trying to get transition in taking off, which we had to kind of go down a little bit to come up, to get enough airspeed up to clear these trees. When the process of doing that, I happened to look out, and I looked down, there was a Vietnamese on the skid, and he was holding on by his hands. And I knew that he couldn't possibly go the 5-minute flight with airspeed back to Khe Sanh. So the only thing I could think of to do was to get him off before we got too high. So I had reached down around my gun, and I was stomping on his hands trying to get him to let loose. And by the time he did let loose, we were about 12 to 13 feet off the ground. And the last time I saw him, he was going through the roof of a hooch. And my pilot said later on when I talked to him, he said, probably good you did. We just barely made it over them trees. Because there was some high trees that we had, like you say, he had to go through his rotation and get enough airspeed where he could get lift. So we got back to Khe Sanh. Paul got out, and that's where you saw that picture of us landing at Khe Sanh. And so then we said we went back there 3 more times. My pilot didn't remember this, but I wrote it in my book, and when it was in my memory, good in my memory, about trying to get medals for my pilots for going in there, which they never did. But anyway, we left there, had to leave Khe Sanh, and then on the way back, we had to fly through. We were following the roads because we didn't have any GPS, no TACAN or anything like that. We were pretty raw helicopters, and we just flying the roads. So evidently the NVA, they knew that helicopters fly the roads. So when we got outside of Wei, my pilot called into Wei and says, which way is the enemy leaving Wei? And he said, most of them are staying, but there's some that are leaving. So he said, we're good. He said, we'll go to the west side of Wei. So we were flying the west side of Wei, looked in front of us and looked like they dug a trench right in the middle of the road. And because I had mount guns, I couldn't shoot through the skids like I used to do when I had a gun on a lanyard. I'd lean out and I could shoot between the skids. Well, we shot up so many skids, they took them away from us, made us wear long mount guns. Well, I wish I'd have had it that day because we couldn't get down to them because they were directly underneath us. We put down as much fire as we could, but we just could shoot as low as we could, which, if you're in the middle of the road, you're just shooting both sides of the road. So anyway, we got out of there, got back to Fubai. Thank you. Got back to Fubai, and we wanted to check out. My pilot was feeling a little bit of a vibration. So we got back to Fubai, and we got in, landed, and so we were going over underneath the helicopter. It was me and my crew chief were up underneath the helicopter looking for bullet holes, and there was all kinds of bullet holes in it, shrapnel holes, and there was one round through the tail boom, which I had a picture of, and I got that stolen from me later on when I was showing it to people. And the worst thing was my pilot was standing back. He looked back while we were counting bullet holes. Pilot said, "Oh my God." And he looked up. We scrambled out from under the helicopter and looked up. And he says, "Look at there." So I was thinking it was holes in the blades. The helicopter has 2 push-pull tubes. We only have 2 blades, so it's just 2 blades, 2 poles that just push to control the pitch in the helicopter. And one of them was shot half in 2 by 50 caliber. I mean, if my pilot would have just pulled too much pitch in landing, it'd have snapped it, and we'd have beat ourselves to death right there on the ground or in the air. We was so lucky that we got there that day. I mean, that we actually landed that day. And it was years later, through my book and through other people, Paul and I came together. And I tell you, I'm really proud to be here with these guys.
Amen.
These guys went through a lot.
Amen.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate y'all's attention. If you have any questions, of any of us, we'd be glad to answer those. Give you, any of you interested, we give you a report on the MIA and the POWs. And 3 guys were captured, were POWs for 5 years, were released in 73 when all the POWs were released. We found all the MIA except Danny Phillips. He was the youngest guy there. He was blinded in the eyes with shrapnel and gravel and stuff, and he was holding the mortar tube like that, and they would hand him a mortar round. He'd drop it. He couldn't see, but he could feel the thing. America's kids are great kids. I mean, some of y'all were kids when we're talking about. I was 25 years old, and Ray was just a kid, I guess, and Tim wasn't much more.
I was old. I was 21.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, I fell in love with them. They fought the most difficult war we've ever faced because of what was going on back in the States and how our hands were tied. The enemy could come across, hit us, and then go back, and all that stuff. And so I just appreciate your service, the service that y'all did, especially we've been through the A1s and the SOG guys, and then any of the others that have served. I appreciate it. God bless y'all, and thank you for having us. Let me just say one thing. 5 years ago,
do.
6 years ago, I started the Georgia Military Veterans Hall of Fame. I love to honor soldiers. We put 83 men and women into the Georgia Military Veterans Hall of Fame. If you know someone that was born in Georgia, lived in Georgia 10 years, or entered the service from Georgia, they are eligible to be put in. I personally, not in that Hall of Fame because I'm the founder and director, it's against the bylaws, but I have put 15 soldiers in the Halls of Fame across the nation. There's no greater honor than to be able to honor one of our fallen warriors, but even the warriors that are alive. So if you're interested, they're laying there if you know somebody from Georgia. God bless.
You have insight? Have me insight?
Shot 3, King 27 has your bingo this time.
Okay, I'm gonna fly down the river, Tell me when I'm over your location,
A little bit longer until Alamo 2 gets in a little better shape. Yeah, I can wait another 5 minutes early. Okay, so we'll hold you another 5 minutes.
Sandy 3-2 on Victor.
Go ahead.
Sure you keep everybody high and back there at the IP.
Register, I'm in Alamo 2, I'm sorry, he's still at the tank.
Okay, babe, how far was I? Was I right over you? Was I right over you? Stand by one. I'm going to take another cut at you. Give me a call when I'm right over you. Okay, 2, is that you over the survivor's location?